Hey folks, David Stewart here. So, calluses on your fingers from playing guitar. Is this something that you should avoid? You actually don't need giant gnarly calluses on your fingers when you play guitar. I'm not sure where this myth arose from other than people tend to get them. Can you avoid having them or do you need them? You don't really need them. I have never had big gnarly calluses on my hands. Why is that? There's a couple of reasons. So the first one is I think I just don't develop calluses as much as other people do. Some people just get more calloused hands from playing guitar or doing anything than I do. I get calluses from weightlifting, but even those are not too gnarly or too bad. You don't really have control over whether or not your body is going to respond a certain way. That being said, I think there's a couple of reasons why I didn't develop huge calluses. Even when I was playing 8+ hours a day, I didn't get those nasty, crazy calluses like people got on the bottoms of their feet or that some guitar players get. I'm going to demo this a little bit with a steel string guitar because I think that makes the effect, all the more clear. But the first thing when it comes to avoiding calluses or, do you not need calluses, is how hard you press the strings. A lot of people are like death gripping their guitar all the time when they play, trying to press as hard as possible. And you're going to get like divots in your hands. You're going to see that. That's going to definitely get calluses. Most people are actually pressing too hard. One of the first things that I used to end up doing with students is actually adjusting the amount of pressure they use to press a string. This is a steel string guitar with very high action. It's definitely higher action than I would normally play with, but it's good for, say, recording chords because those chords are going to be very clear when you play them without any kind of string buzzing or anything. So, you could set a guitar up in different ways. But most people don't learn the correct amount of force to use when pressing the string. So when you press the string, a good exercise to do is to touch the string and start slowly adding pressure until you hear it buzz, and then add pressure till you hear it nice and clear. And that's how much pressure you should actually use to press the strings of the guitar. The other reason that people end up pressing too hard is they're not pressing in the right place. So if you press close to the fret, you need to use less pressure. I'm not really using a whole lot of pressure to get that G out. There's not a lot of pressure I'm actually using, even down here, to make a bar. I'm not using that much pressure because I'm pressing very close to the fret. The further away from the fret you press, the more it just becomes that thud sound, the harder you have to press to get the same sound. Now, this is actually how we generate vibrato in the classical sense, is by pressing away from the fret makes it go sharp, and pressing towards the fret makes it go flat. So, because we're varying the amount of pressure on the string. You have to press really hard to get it to come out there. So not only are you pressing harder, but you're going to make your pitch go sharp. And that's another reason to press close to the fret. Some people get real precise and they're like 3 winds away from the fret is the precise amount of distance you need from the fret. But just press close to the fret and you'll find that it's much easier to press the strings. Now if you press on top of the fret, you're going to get kind of a muted sound. So very close behind the fret. The closer you press to the fret, the easier it is to get the string to sound nice and clear without having to do anything. And also, the better position you'll be in to do real vibrato with your strings. So press close to the fret and use light pressure. The other thing is use light strings. A lot of times people, they hear that like Stevie Ray Vaughan or someone use these really heavy strings, and so they throw really heavy strings on their guitar thinking that's what good players do. They're like, Zakk Wylde uses these heavy strings, and no, you actually don't need that. You don't need, even on a steel string acoustic, it's not really going to make your guitar that much louder. They have a different feeling to them. Really, you should think about playing with lighter gauge strings. I think these are 11s, which are heavier than I normally use on an acoustic guitar. Even on an acoustic guitar, a steel string acoustic, I'll go down to extra light strings, 10s, because they're much easier on the fingers. And when you're playing a long time, not only will you avoid the calluses, but you will avoid all the fatigue that your hand can get into, especially, when you're playing like lots of bar chords and things like that, it'll tire your hand out if you're playing on these heavy gauge strings all the time. You don't really need them. In fact, you'll get a little bit brighter sound by playing on lighter strings as well. So if you want a brighter, more jingly kind of sound, lighter strings are going to be better as well. So press close to the fret, use less pressure, use only as much pressure as you need, plus press close to the fret. So you don't need to use a lot of pressure, and use lighter strings. And don't fall into the meme of using heavy strings. So try lighter strings out. This is especially true on an electric guitar. I use like 9s on my electric guitars. Any lighter than that, and they start to feel a little too slinky. They feel like just they're kind of flopping around under my hands. Now, I actually use hard tension strings on my classical for the same reason, is that they feel too rolly under the hands if they get any lighter than that. And if you're doing a lot of left-hand technique, it's better to have a little bit more string stiffness than to have really easy things on the hands. So those are 3 things you can do, and that will actually, reduce just quite how severe those calluses will actually get on the end of your fingers. I never got really severe ones, even when I was playing hours and hours a day. I think because I did those things. I tended to play with lighter gauge strings for practical reasons. Once I started gigging, I wanted to go down to light gauge strings so my hands weren't completely tired out by the end of the gig. So played on lighter gauge strings, had better technique, so I didn't have to press as hard, and then I learned to use the correct amount of pressure. And I think one of the things when people are learning chords is, you may find that one finger is, your index finger is very strong, and your ring finger may be much weaker. So if you're playing a chord, you may find that your fingers are not super independent when you start out. So you start using a lot of pressure to make the chord come out, not realizing that you don't need to use that much pressure. You have to start squeezing really hard with your hand in order to get maybe that ring finger to press down properly, and that ends up kind of carrying over into your other fingers. So your index and your middle finger end up being too much pressure to get the same chord out. So that's something that I think that tends to happen with beginners. So one of the ways that you could do that is to actually make the chord and then go through each string and listen to it, and then do that pressure thing with each finger. Slowly add pressure until it sounds. That's how much pressure you should actually use to make a chord. So developing that finger independence can really help to relieve some of that fatigue as well. And lastly, thumb position also does matter. Your hand is weaker when your thumb is higher. And this is a weird thing, but if you think about how your hand is meant to press, it's meant to press towards your thumb. You pick up things with your fingers and your thumb. You don't pick them up with your palm. This may feel like when you're gripping a baseball bat, like you have a good grip on the guitar, but it's actually weaker for pressing the strings. So lowering your thumb and getting a more neutral thumb position can, in a lot of cases, increase the strength of your fingers and your control over how much pressure you're actually using to press the strings. I think which can help that as well. So thanks so much, guys. I'll see you all next time. Have a great one, and peace out.